signed Washington Accord. And when we talk in terms of Washington Accord, it started with 6 countries, but at present there are 15 permanent signatories to Washington Accord. And all these countries have signed an agreement for mutual recognition of the qualification, and India is also aspiring to be member, that is permanent member. At present it's a provisional signatory, and very soon the country is going to be permanent member. And all these countries who have signed an accord, they follow outcome-based education. When we talk in terms of outcome-based education, that means we are all concerned with what a student will be able to do after the completion of the program. So we are more concerned about the graduate attributes. That means the competencies or the capabilities a person would acquire. And in this regard, these accreditation is for the undergraduate programs, and the graduate attributes have been enlisted. So what is needed is accreditation is going to be mandatory for all the programs being offered by the degree institutions or diploma institutions, the technical institutions. And we must thus understand what is outcome-based education. So outcome-based education is actually student-centered approach, and it focuses on the intended learning outcomes. When we say intended learning outcomes, it means what will be that a student will be able to do at the end of instruction. And here, there are, when we go for outcome-based education, it starts with clear picture of what is important for students to be able to do. At present, the acceptability of our students is low because we do not know what they can do. And industry requires people who possess technical knowledge and skills, at the same time a host of generic skills. So industry is more concerned with ability to perform, ability to carry out tasks at the workplace. And the curriculum is designed on the basis of these outcomes which we expect the student to have. And delivery of the instruction is also aligned with the outcomes as well as the assessment of outcomes. And these are K to K, as has been referred, the attributes which are to be taken into account. So the student needs to possess all these attributes at the end of the program. So I'll not be going into details of these attributes. These you can go to the NBA site and see for yourself the A to K education outcomes which have been listed there. But what we focus on, this is what I refer to, that outcome-based education focuses on what the student should be able to do at the end of program. And the curriculum, teaching, learning strategies and assessment of the students, that is all assigned to the outcomes we expect out of the particular program. And in this context, we must understand what are these intended learning outcomes. In other terms, when we say intended learning outcomes at each topic level or at each lesson level, the teacher must try to specify instructional objectives. And if you know where you want to reach, then you can select a path, you can select strategy, you can select the method, you can select the media, you can select appropriate evaluation techniques, right? So I will try to clarify this concept of instructional objectives, and you can simply see that these are statements. Then what is it? Why I am teaching? The purpose of teaching And what a student will be able to do if I clearly specify those things, they are my instructional objectives. And in other words, you can say at the end of instruction, what a student has the capability or ability, that is what is referred to intended learning outcome. And say, for example, if I am giving a definition of a DC motor, what I expect my student to do, that he should be able to define DC motor. If I am trying to compare petrol engine with a diesel engine, I expect that student will be able to differentiate or distinguish between petrol engine and a diesel engine. Or if I take a case of the language, visualbasic.net, so I expect that a student will be able to write a program in visualbasic.net. Or if I am using any software and then the person, I expect that the student will be able to use the software and come up with its application. And these, when we state in terms of these statements, that student will be able to do this, these are referred as intended learning outcome. And all objectives, they should be characterized by 5 characteristics. What is this SMART? S stands for specific. Each instructional objective starts with action verb. When I say action verb, as I said, define is an action verb. When I say list the advantages of DC machine, list is action verb. When I say differentiate between deep foundation and a shallow foundation, differentiate or distinguish is action verb. So you need to clearly specify what behavior is expected of the student. Whether he can define, he can differentiate, he can analyze, he can compare, he can compute, or he can analyze, or he can design, he can modify, he can analyze. What is it that a student will be able to do? So when you use an action verb, that means you are indicating the specific behavior out of the student. Then M stands for measurable. And measurable means whatever is observable is measurable. And when we say define, a student can either define the term orally or the student can define the term in written form. And you can observe that behavior and you can assess that behavior. So this behavior is measurable. But when I say understand is a more generic term which is not observable, because different people can have different connotations attached to the term understand. Understand is something which is internal process, and thus it cannot be measurable unless and until you break down the term understand into specific behaviors. Then comes A. A stands for agreed upon. Teacher and student, they should agree that what will be the outcome of learning. So student and teacher should come to the common understanding of, after learning a particular topic, what a student will be able to do. R stands for realistic. When you specify instructional objectives, they need to be achievable. That means I cannot say solve problems, industrial problems. Now student cannot solve every type of problem, or any individual cannot solve every type of problem. So you need to clarify the breadth and scope of what he can do. That means you simply say solve the problems, like you said yesterday, higher order differential equations, right? So you are clear-cut determining the scope within which a student can operate. So R, realistic, what can be achieved. T stands for time framed. When we specify instructional objectives, they are achievable within a specified period of time. So whenever you write objectives, they should be specific, measurable, agreed upon, realistic, and time framed. Now we come to that when we write these objectives, what a student will be able to do, these serve very important purposes for the students and teacher. Now the very first purpose is that you try to motivate the student to learn the topic which is at hand. Now say for example, we have taken the example of differential equation. So when I am teaching differential equation, I expect that the student will be able to solve the differential equation of first order, second order and higher order. And when I specify this to my student, then my student is motivated to learn because he is not at present able to do that. So he is also motivated to learn the topic so that he can solve the problems, differential equation problems. Then one can monitor progress. Now these objectives, they act like milestones. What are milestones? How do you like to describe? What are milestones? Milestone तो पता होगा? Any response from the center? Yes? क्या होते हैं milestone? क्या होता है? JCDM, would you like? हाँ जी.
Generally, milestone is showing that how much kilometer we are far from distance.
Very right. आपने बिल्कुल ठीक कहा कि milestone is indicating how much distance you have traveled. So say for example, I am moving from Chandigarh to Delhi. The total distance is 265 kilometers and I know that Ambala is around 45 kilometers. So when I reach Ambala, I am satisfied that I have covered 45 kilometers. When I reach Karnal, which is midway between Chandigarh and Delhi, I am satisfied that I have covered half of the distance. Likewise, when a teacher states the instructional objective, the student can monitor the progress, that how much he has learned out of those 4 or 5 objectives. Or a teacher, when interacting with the student in the class, can also monitor the progress, that how many objectives have been achieved, whether 2 have been achieved or 3 have been achieved, and he can thus take a decision to change the pace of the session. Maybe you have a 45 minutes class or a 50 minutes class and you go with 3 objectives in mind and you have divided the time into 3 objectives. So you need to take care of that within those 50 minutes you are able to achieve those objectives. Same way, a student, when he knows that these are the 4 objectives and he sits for study and he tries to answer, say you have said define, so he tries to define. So he says, how much have I achieved out of these 4 objectives? 2 I am able to achieve, or 3 am I able to achieve, or all the 4 I am able to achieve. So a student can monitor his own progress, or the teacher can monitor the progress in the class. Then these objectives, when they are specified, they help the teacher in selection of the relevant method and media and activities which are to be integrated in the classroom situation. Now, let me take an example. When I want to say that I want that my student should be able to differentiate between metals and non-metals, then it becomes important for me as teacher that I try to bring in the similarities and the differences between metal and non-metal. And I show these differences and similarities maybe with the help of a tabular form where I, on one hand, I write metal, another side I write non-metal, and then I first deal with similarities, then I deal with differences. Or for example, I am teaching planetary movements. I want to show how planets move, right? Or how they are organized. One thing is I can deliver without the use of media, but this will not help. So the media which I can use is, maybe I use the animation or and show them the organization of the planets and the movement of the planets. So that gives me an indication what kind of media can be used. Or say for example, you want to show the relationship between V and I, voltage and current. The graph, already prepared graph can be shown, or you can show through the help of animation and simulation, where when you increase the voltage, there is a corresponding increase in I, or when the I increases, there is a corresponding increase in the voltage. So a person will have a better understanding of relationship between voltage and current. And thus, when you have specified the relationship, then the student, you get an idea which method, which media, and what kind of material I need to use in the classroom and for facilitating learning among the students. Clear? Then comes select the appropriate ways to evaluate the learning. Now, if I say we started with differentiation, differentiate between metal and non-metal. Now, there can be two types of evaluation, either a written evaluation or a oral evaluation. You can pose an oral question, get a reply, or you ask a student to write it, the notebook, and you can evaluate that answer. But when it comes to skill learning, and you want that a person should be able to verify Ohm's law in the laboratory, now here you cannot use either a written test or the oral test, but you would like to use a performance test where the student goes to the lab, he tries to set up the experimental setup, and then he tries to verify the Ohm's law in the laboratory. So this would require a performance test on the part of the student. So if you are very clear that what a student will be able to do, so you can select an appropriate technique of evaluation for evaluating the student's performance. So it helps. So I have covered this. In addition to that, I would say if you write down objectives, you are able to communicate to the outside world. Now I say I have been a student of civil engineering. I have read these papers. Now this doesn't tell the other person what I can do. But if I say I can design a bridge, I can design a road, I can give the design of the payments, I can let you know the materials which can be used for construction of these things. You are now speaking of the capability you have acquired after attending the program in civil engineering. Or a student of computer science can better communicate to the outside world that what he can do. He can write softwares in which language, or what kind of softwares he can use for designing the product. So when you tell the ability or the capability you have acquired, the other person is in a position to understand better. So these are 5 major purposes which can be served by the instructional objectives. Now we come to, when a student is there, we want to enhance his knowledge. So anything which deals with increasing or enhancing the knowledge of the student, it falls in cognitive domain. Anything which has to do with acquisition of information. So anything which goes and build up the knowledge on the part of the learner, that comes under cognitive domain. the skills which are to be acquired by the students. So acquisition of skills comes in the domain of psychomotor. And we also want to develop certain attitudes, so they fall in the domain of affective, domain of instructional objectives. So this classification has been given by Benjamin Bloom. So Bloom tried to classify all the instructional objectives into three categories. First, dealing with acquisition of information or enhancement of knowledge, psychomotor, acquisition of skills, and affective, dealing with attitudes and values. So we'll deal these three in a little detail. First, coming to instructional objectives in cognitive domain. So Bloom has given 5 levels of objectives. And now we have a revised domain. Earlier Bloom had given 5, and those were knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, and evaluation. But now Anderson and Crethwell, they have tried to revise the Bloom's taxonomy, and they have brought in the verbs here. You can see, so they say what are the processes which are used by the student to learn a particular thing, whether he enters into rote memorization, whether he tries to understand, whether he tries to learn by applying the things. So they have given remembering, understanding, applying, evaluating, and creating as the 5 levels of learning in the cognitive domain. Now in the next slide you can see what is remembered. Remembering is verbal information and the factual information. So understanding is that of concepts, applying is when you learn rules you apply, and analyzing, evaluating, and creating, these 3 levels are used for problem solving. So let's go one by one. Remembering. Remembering refers to what has ever been learned, and then you try to rote memorize that. And here when I say you recall the range of material from specific facts to complete theories. देखा होगा बच्चे जो हैं वो वर्बेटम याद कर लेते हैं और जब एग्जाम होता है तो उसको लिख के आ जाते हैं, but in real way they do not understand those theories or principles. When I say define, defining a term doesn't require any understanding. You can rote memorize that and then recall that and repeat that. When it comes to the formula also, many people rote memorize the formula or the theory and they can repeat that. So this is the lowest level of learning as far as cognitive domain is concerned. सबसे जो basic चीज है वो क्या है? Rote memorization. And let me give you a few examples. When you say arrange the components of engine, this is nothing but rote memorization. You say define engine, that a student will be able to define engine. It is rote memorization, objective at the remembering level. When you say label the given diagram, so the student is only to recall the parts of the diagram and label the diagram. It is simple rote memorization. Or you say name any 3 devices which make use of engine. So it's only rote memorization, you are naming. Or you say name the components of a machine. It is simply you are recalling, you have rote memorized. Okay? Or when you ask the person to state a law, you say state Ohm's law, state Charles' law, state Joule's law. All these are nothing but require the capability to remember the information and recall the information and reproduce the information. So the very first level of learning is remembering. Then comes understanding. How understanding differs from remembering? Yes, anyone? Dipti, would you like to reply? Okay, thank you. Anybody from the center would like to reply? How remembering differs from understanding?
मैम जैसे अभी आपने कहा कि जो बच्चे हैं
हाँ जी,
वो चीज़ें समझते नहीं है चाहे लेकिन लिख देते हैं
हाँ,
तो दिस इज
ओके
द डिफरेंस बिटवीन अंडरस्टैंडिंग एंड रिमेम्बरिंग
ओके
दे
गुरप्रीत जी बोल
रिमेम्बर
रहे हैं ना?
जी मैम
Gurpreet, thank you. So,
थैंक
friends, when we say understand, that means a person, a student has the capability to translate the material from one form to another. That is, he can convert words to numbers or he can interpret the material. Now, when I say a student can explain semiconductors in his own words, that means he has understood the concept. Or when we say a person can give examples of a two-stroke petrol engine, person has understood the concept of two-stroke petrol engine. Or when a person can identify carburetor from the given components, then also we say that the person has understood the concept of a carburetor. And then by estimating future trends, that means if a person is given 10 years data that the wheat price for the last 10 years was this, can you predict the price of the wheat in the year 2020? If you can do that, that means you have understood the concept of projecting the figures, right? So when we say the person has understood, when the person can explain the concept in his own words, when the person can give examples of those concepts, when the person can interpret the relationship between the different concepts, and the person has the capability to project or to predict the phenomena in the future. And here the verbs which can be used, they include, I'll pick up few examples. Explain. When you say explain the concept of force and you say define force, define is remembering, where he is simply recalling the definition and repeating that definition or reproducing. But when I say explain the concept of force, I expect that the student will be able to elaborate on the definition and he'll be able to give one or two examples of force. Then see here, it is written differentiate, and I have been taking example differentiate between metal and non-metal. So a person knows the definition, he knows the characteristics of metals and non-metals, and he is now able to put it the same in his own words is understanding. Or when we say interpret the given graph which is showing a relationship between two components, maybe stress and strain, and you say stress is directly proportional to strain. If the person can interpret the graph and come out with the conclusion that stress is directly proportional to strain, that means he has understood the relationship between stress and strain, and he has the capability to interpret, right? So understanding level pay, the verbs which are most commonly used would include explain, interpret, distinguish, differentiate, compare, right? Or compute, even compute. You know the formula for length, calculation of the area of a rectangle, that is length into breadth. Now you apply that rule to compute the area of any given object or a room or a building. That is, you have comprehended or you have the ability to understand the rule of calculating the area. ठीक है? Now the next higher level is applying. How would you like to interpret applying? क्या होता है applying? और क्या apply करते हैं हम? Okay. Okay. So, okay. Okay. So maybe applying the learned knowledge or applying the learned rules. And primarily that means you put the knowledge into action, rightly said. And here you, whatever you have learned, you are putting that knowledge into use in a new situation. The underlying is new situation. Whatever situation you have learned in the class, it is not the same, but you are trying to apply it in other situation. I just take an example. You teach subtraction to the student in the class. You expect that a student will be able to subtract any two numbers, right? Now, you send the child to the market with 1,000 rupees and you give a list that you buy these things. When he comes back, you expect that he'll be able to give you the details of the account and he'll be able to say, this is the balance I have received. So he is applying the rule of subtraction in a new situation. Or the person is traveling by bus, he buys the ticket, then he can calculate the balance which he should receive after the amount of that or the fare is deducted from the total amount. So he is able to apply the rule in a new situation. Or say for example, when I am saying that I am pressing the wall, okay? So you can always apply the rule. For every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. The force which you would apply on the wall, the same force will be applied on your hand. होगा कि नहीं? Or when you throw a ball, it travels a distance back. Which rule is applicable? Again the same, for every action there is equal and opposite reaction. Or firing of a bullet, so that is also the same. So that law is applicable in a new situation. Or I say, when the person has learned a rule of law of refraction, he can shoot an underwater target because there the law of refraction is applied. So whatever rules are there in the subject, they are applied by the student in a new situation. So this is what is the next higher level, and there you can see the verbs which can be used: apply a rule, demonstrate a rule, or employ or interpret the consequences of in a given situation, or the person can practice or solve a problem by applying the rules, right? So when you put these things, then you are writing objectives at the applying level. So the verbs which can be used to write objectives, they will be apply, demonstrate, illustrate, interpret, operate, solve, use, or practice. Okay? Now we come to the next higher level is analyzing. Okay? Analyzing means breaking down the whole into its constituent parts. Say for example, I say that you are able to explain the reason for air pollution in a given industrial locality. Now here what kind of ability to analyze is used by the student? Yes? If I say student will be able to explain the reasons for air pollution in industrial area phase 2 of Chandigarh, what kind of analysis is done by the student? Yes? He should know what kind of industries are there in industrial area phase 2. How many industries have emission from that location? How many of them are thus contributing to the air pollution? यही तो करना है ना? So he is breaking down the whole into its constituent parts and he is able to explain the reasons for air pollution. So analyzing simply means ability to break down the material into its component parts. Now here the verbs which can be used is analyze. Now say for example, I give you a program written in C++ and I ask you to identify the problem or the mistake committed by the student in writing a program in C++. That means this requires ability to analyze. Or a student has drawn a circuit diagram and you say identify the fault in the circuit diagram. Okay? So this would also require ability to analyze. Or a person has computed a certain values, or he has applied certain rules to solve a problem, and but he's not getting the right answer. Again, you can identify the fault or the mistake made by the student or by you. So that is ability to analyze. So here you can see analyze, compare, contrast, criticize, examine, explain. These are some of the verbs which can be used to write objectives at the analyzing level. Then comes the next higher level, evaluating. May I know from the audience what is evaluation? When would you say that you are using the ability to evaluate? Just give me one example where this ability is utilized. Ji, any example you can quote? Let me give one example. Say for example, you go and you want to buy a TV for your home. You go to the marketplace, you go enter one shop, you ask the person to show you the different models of TV. You look to the different brands, you look to the different models. Then what do? You compare one model with the other. Then you look what to your own resources. Which one fits my pocket? You take a decision. So when you are comparing, you are actually determining the worth of a particular product in comparison to others, and then you are taking a decision whether I should go and buy this or the other one, right? So evaluating involves two things: determining the worth of a phenomena, object, process, or a technique, and taking a decision. So this is what is written here, the ability to judge the value of the material. It is, or based upon different criteria, this is ability to evaluate. And these are the learning outcomes of highest order. And here, say for example, wherever there are two methods to do certain tasks, there are two techniques whereby you can produce a product, there are two materials which can be used to produce a product, there a selection needs to be made by the individual. And when the person has acquired the ability to evaluate, then the person can select appropriate technique, appropriate method, appropriate material in a given situation. Say for example, I say select appropriate engine for the given sports utility vehicle. So here the student who has the knowledge of what an engine is, what are the different types of engines which can be used, and which engine will be more relevant to sports utility vehicle, he can make a choice. Then he can justify why he has selected a particular type of engine. So evaluation means appraising the efficiency, effectiveness, appropriateness, relevance of a particular technique, method, media, or object in a given situation. Now say for example, I say I have to design a carburetor for a particular machine, right, engine. So what kind of specifications would be used and why? If this decision can be taken by the student, that means he has the ability to evaluate. Or say for example, I have to build a house. So I say select the kind of foundation which will be used for building a house in the hilly areas. Now here, whether the person would go for a deep foundation or a shallow foundation, and he gives reason why a particular kind of foundation will be used, that means he has acquired the capability of evaluation. ठीक बात है? Or I say, which particular language would you prefer to, now I am framing a question, but the capability is that a person can select an appropriate language for writing a program for issuing a salary slip to the employees of the organization. If I say this is the objective, then the person should have the knowledge of the various programs, languages. Then he should be able to identify what are the different aspects which need to be reflected into the salary slip, and then which language is more efficient in giving me the results, desired results. Then the person is able to make a choice, and then he'll be able to justify his choice of writing a program in a particular language. So objectives at the evaluating level means a person can select, person can appraise, person can judge, person can evaluate, person can determine the worth of any phenomena, object, technique or method in a given situation. Now the highest level in the cognitive domain, that is sixth level, is creating. When we say creating means designing, producing, planning or inventing. Just let me take an example. You teach design subject, and from a civil engineer, I expect that a student will be able to design a staircase for a 5-story residential building, or a student will be able to design a residential building for 500 people to be housed in that building. So if a person can give me the design, that, or design a bridge or design a road or design a laboratory layout for a, say I want to have a highway engineering lab. So if a student can give me a design of highway engineering lab, then I say he has the capability to create. Or a person, a mechanical engineer, can give me a design of a heavy vehicle of a given specification. If he can do that, that means he has the capability to design or create, right? Clear? Now, or a person from computer science, when he can write a program, he can develop a software, when he can develop an antivirus, he has the ability to create. Okay? Now we move on to how to write these objectives. Broadly, there are two approaches which can be used to write objectives. One approach is given by Gronland, and another approach has been given by Mager. First, I am touching Mager's approach. According to Mager, when we have to specify instructional objective or write instructional objective, three things are very important. What are those three things? One is the performance. That means what performance you expect from your student. I say solve. Solve is performance, which I expect. Second thing is the objective must clearly specify the conditions under which that performance is to be exhibited. That means I must say solve 8 problems or related to integration out of the given 10. So condition क्या है? 8 out of the given 10. right? Performance criteria is the third parameter. Solve 8 problems of integration out of the given 10 with 100% accuracy. So performance criteria क्या है? 100% accuracy. So according to Mager, all objectives, when they are specified, these three things should be clearly indicated in the objectives. But when we go to applying, ability to analyze, ability to evaluate and create, it is not easy to write objectives which include all these three components. So this approach requires lot of time to write objectives, and it is not feasible to write objectives at higher level. So what we normally follow is Gronland's approach to writing objectives. And according to Gronland, first we need to write general objectives. And when we write general objectives, they are also to be written in terms of students' behavior. That means whether a student will be able to understand, know, or appreciate. These are the three terms which can be utilized while specifying instructional objectives at the level of generality. Because here I am saying general objective. So three verbs can be used: understand, know, and appreciate. And this is again in terms of student behavior, what a student will be able to do, not in terms of teacher's behavior. I don't write a general objective starting with develop the capability to solve differential. No, I say solve differential equation, or I say understand the method of solving the differential equation, right? Then for these general objectives are at a higher level of generality, and they are written for the major parts which are being covered in a particular topic. I'll give you example. Then each general objective needs to be broken down into 2 to 3 specific objectives. When I say understand, my connotation would be different than you. As a teacher, I am satisfied when a student is able to define. Another teacher is satisfied when you say explain. Another teacher may be satisfied when he says he is able to apply the knowledge in a new situation. So each general objective is then broken down into specific objective, and for each general objective 2 to 3 specific objectives are written. Specific objectives are also in terms of student behavior, but they are specific. They start with action, verb. Now just have a look and see the example. Say I have taken an example of a topic, introduction to system. When I say system, see what are the things. Now you are familiar with topic analysis. So you break down the topic into its constituent parts, and then for each duty there should be one general objective. So here you see when I say introduction to the system, one period I'm going to engage. At the end of that unit of instruction, the student will be able to understand the concept and types of system. And here I try to break down this into specific objectives. When I say understand the concept, then the very first is explain the concept of system. Hota kya hai? So I expect that a student will be able to define system, elaborate on that definition, and give 1 or 2 examples of that system. Then differentiate between open and closed system. So again, I expect that a student will be able to give me 1 or 2 examples of open and closed system. Then differentiate between static and dynamic system. Then give examples of open and closed system, or give examples of static and dynamic system. Now I was delimiting myself to only the concept and types of system, and thus I could have 5 specific objectives which I would like to achieve at the end of unit of instruction, and student must demonstrate this ability to explain the system, differentiate between open and closed and static and dynamic, and they should be able to give examples of the various types of the system. यही तो चाहते हैं ना? Clear है? Now let's take another example. Taken an example of DC machine. Many of you must be teaching this. So understand the construction and application of DC machine. This is my general objective, but this general objective I am trying to break down that a student should be able to state the working principle of DC machine. State, when I say, is at remembering level. ठीक है ना? It requires only remembering. When I say label the parts of DC machine on a given diagram, he has to simply recall the name and then put the label. It is again remembering level. Fine. Now go to explain the function of various parts of DC machine. Which level is this? Understanding. So from remembering you are going level higher, that is understanding. So state the applications of DC machine. Now which level is this? Stating the application, I simply wrote memorize and then I reproduce. I need not apply. Application level would be apply, right? So when you ask the student to state the application, that he'll be able to state the application, simply that means he has remembered the things and he's reproducing the things. Go to another topic of multi-stage amplifiers. Now look through what you are going to include on the multi-stage amplifier. One would be understand the concept and uses of multi-stage amplifier, and then you try to break down. See how many could be there. Explain multi-stage amplifier. होता क्या है? Then enlist various types of multi-stage amplifier. You expect that a student will be simply able to name these various types of amplifier. So he is simply writing RC coupled, transformer coupled and direct coupled. But higher level would be when he is able to make comparison between or differentiate between the two. So differentiate among various types of multi-stage amplifier. This is the understanding level. Then explain gain of multi-stage amplifier. So here again this requires understanding. State the uses of multi-stage, again is remembering. So you can see that first you write a general objective which is broader, which is more generic, and then you try to break that concept of understanding into the specific behavior which you expect a student to demonstrate. So you are using action verbs while writing specific objectives. Let's take another multi-stage power and difference. ये तो similar ही हो गया. But here you see when I write determine the AC parameters for a capacitively coupled multi-stage amplifier. Determine, applying, determine. किसी के parameters को determine करना, that means you are applying a rule and then determining the characteristics. Describe करना है understanding, determine करना है applying. Determine DC and AC parameters for direct coupled amplifiers and explain how negative feedback can be used to stabilize the bias and the gain. So the first part applying है, next would be again the understanding part. Then आगे compute DC and AC parameter for a class A power amplifier and describe operation along the AC load line. Compute, अगर तो मैं एक्चुअल उसको दे देती हूँ DC एंड AC पैरामीटर करने के लिए एक पावर एम्पलीफायर उसको एक्चुअल दे देती हूँ एंड ही डज दैट, इट इज एप्लीकेशन. बट इफ आई ओनली गिव अ न्यूमेरिकल, इट्स अ अंडरस्टैंडिंग लेवल. ठीक है, ये भी वही है. ओके, लेट्स टेक another example, generalized treatment of electrical machine. Here some of the specific objectives would be: explain the need for electromechanical energy conversion, differentiate between motor and generator, explain the basic principles of motoring and generating action, then define torque, then explain the significance of torque angle, state the working principle of rotating machines, right? Again, here you can see that only remembering and understanding level has been covered. Ye DC machine I think I've already done. So this is another from data communication and computer network. Here you see understand data communication system and its components. And the second one is understand basic computer network technology. So these two are my general objectives which I want students to achieve, and then each general objective is broken down into specific objectives and list the basic elements of data communication. Next would be differentiate among three data transmission modes, that is simplex, half duplex, full duplex. Then explain three different types of data transmission speeds. Then state advantages and disadvantages. Then distinguish between synchronous and asynchronous transmission, compare the relative advantages and so on. So I hope it is clear that you pick up a topic, break down the topic into its constituent parts, and then for each part of the topic, first you try to write the general objective at the duty level, then you try to break down the duty level objective, general objective, into specific behavior expected of the student. That is what is referred to as specific objectives. Right? So friends, let me not go into this few example. Let me just, that was cognitive domain. The other domain is psychomotor domain. And when we say psychomotor domain, that means it relates to acquisition of skills. And any skill learning starts with, any complex skill learning starts with imitation. Now, even when a small child is made to learn how to sharpen a pencil by using a sharpener, what a parent does or what a teacher does, he tells the child to hold the sharpener, hold the pencil in another hand, insert the pencil into the sharpener, and then rotate it clockwise. And the caution given is that you have to put little pressure on the pencil so that the lead does not break. Yahi to kehte hai na? And sharpen till you get the desired quality of the lead. Yahi hota hai. But what happens? You don't simply allow the child to do that. First you do yourself. Ask the child to observe you. And then you ask him, okay, no, beta, ab dalo, and aap usko haath dete ho. This is what you are doing. You are allowing him to manipulate along with you. But at a stage when you allow the child to do it on his own, that is a stage which is referred to as manipulation. You allow the child to manipulate the machinery, equipment, and the tool. When the person manipulates, he commits mistake. बार बार बच्चा उसको कर रहा है तो सिक्का टूटता जा रहा है और आप कहते हो नहीं नहीं ऐसे नहीं करते. Let me tell you again. And when practice is there, accuracy would creep in, so precision would come. अब क्या हो रहा है? A stage, when you do continuous practice, you will learn how to coordinate the various movements, and that is what is referred to as articulation. And a stage would come where you acquire the ability to modify, to design something new, to evolve a new technique of doing the same thing. अब मैं आपको एक और एग्जाम्पल देती हूँ. How many of you have driven the scooter? करा है? कभी क्लच वायर टूटी है या ब्रेक वायर टूटी है स्कूटर की? आपने क्या किया था? जुगाड़ करके मैकेनिक तक ले गए. लेकिन a lady like me or you will not do this, and what will be stranded on the roadside. That means a novice cannot do it. A person who has mastered the skill of driving a scooter will be able to modify, adapt and design something, new technique to take the vehicle to the mechanic shop. I take an example of a mobile phone. Now, you see, when the first mobile came, it was only for sending the messages. है ना? Now you see the mobile, it has variety of function. Somebody has improved the product. Somebody has added value to the product. Who can do that? An expert can do that. He has now designed a mobile which can be used for recording the videos, for utilizing the internet, for sending the multimedia messages. Even you can use the mobile phone for the projection of your PowerPoints and so on. So there are a number of functions which have been added to the mobile phone. So somebody has modified, adapted, designed a new one from the original shape. And this is what the highest level of acquisition of a skill. So whatever work activity which you carry out in your laboratories, the workshop, what you expect, a student will be able to do something. है ना? Do क्या करेगा? I take few examples of practical exercise. When you say verification of Bernoulli's equation. Now verification of this equation requires what? It's also a skill. When you say verify Ohm's law, you take the student to the laboratory, he does the experimentation, he takes the reading. Ask the student to drill a hole in the wall or fix a nail somewhere. This is all, or prepare a lap joint or a butt joint and so on. They are all examples of psychomotor domain, right? And the steps which are taken to do that, they become your specific object. Clear hai? Clear hai? Okay. Third thing which we are left with is affective domain. Now, this is a question of bringing a change in the attitudes and values of the student, right? Now, how do we build up our value system? I'm just starting with receiving. Hanji? Yeah, role model also. Fine, fine. Okay. First thing, the student keeps on receiving do's and don'ts. देखो आप अपना बचपन याद करो. माँ ने बोला, do not talk to stranger. Don't be out for late. Go to bed early. Get up early in the morning. Always speak truth. Be honest. Cooperate with others. ये जो do's and don'ts हमें जिंदगी में मिलते हैं from the childhood, they are the basis for our value system, right? बच्चा क्या करता है? सब कुछ receive करता है पहले. Then he starts responding. कुछ चीजें तो वो मान लेता है, कुछ को वो क्वेश्चन करना शुरू करता है. Why should I go to bed early? Why should I get up early in the morning? Why should not I talk to strangers? Starts responding to those things, positively or negatively. Valuing, he starts valuing, attaching value to certain things. As an individual, you may value 10 things. You may value time, you may value people, you may value honesty, you may value the teamwork, you may value the task, you may value the time, and so on. So there are a number of things which we value. You accord some weightage to these things in your life. Then comes organization. If you have to choose between the two values, say, my friend, he has met with an accident, there was an accident which took place. Now, I value speaking truth, I value the relationship. Okay? But out of the relationship and the truth, which one would I pick up? That is the priority I accord to a given value. If I want to save my friend, I'll speak. Yeah, I tell a lie. If I don't want to, I value the relationship, then I'll lie. But if I don't value the relation, I give more weightage to truth, then I'll speak the truth. Maybe he has to face the consequences. Organization. If you have to pick up or choose from two values, which one would be given more weightage? So you always arrange the values in order of priority. So that is what is referred to as organization. Highest level in the value system is when you personify that value. अब मैं नॉन वायलेंस बोलती हूँ, कौन याद करते हो आप? महात्मा गांधी, ठीक है? क्या आप सब नॉन वायलेंट हो? नॉन वायलेंस का नहीं प्रिंसिपल यूज करते हो? महात्मा गांधी जी क्यों याद आए? महात्मा गांधी ही क्यों याद आए? He was the epitome of non-violence. He never compromised on that non-violence. When I say social service, all of you would say, Mother Teresa, है ना? You remember her. But there are many other people who have been into social service. That means that you personify that value, you stand for that value, whatever may come or go. That is the highest level, but very few of us reach this level of characterization of the values. We change our values according to the situation. मुखौटे पहने हुए हैं ना? The same way, जो हमारा employer कह रहा है, the student have become materialistic. Students are not able to work in teams. Students are not committed to the task. These are all value issues, right? And a teacher, by being a role model, has to inculcate these values among the students. It is not only that I become a role model, but I need to create certain conditions whereby the student acquires the right kind of attitudes and values. अब देखिए मैं एग्जाम्पल आपको देती हूँ. आई एक्सपेक्ट, है ना, मैं स्टूडेंट से क्या एक्सपेक्ट करती हूँ? स्टूडेंट विल बी पंक्चुअल टू द क्लास. Student will attend the classes regularly. Student will submit the assignment on time. Student will take all the class tests organized during the semester. Student will share his resources with the team members who are with them, right? Student will cooperate with the team member. Student will listen to the other's point of view. Student will take care of machinery and equipment in the laboratories and the workshop. Student will respect the elders. Student will provide a helping hand to the needy. ये क्या है? These are all attitudes and values. And you are trying to inculcate these among the students by providing the right kind of experiences and by being a role model in your classes. यही तो करते हैं. So all these, when you write, attend classes, cooperate with others, respect the elders, obey the orders, obey the rules and regulations of the institution, ये सब क्या हैं? These are objectives in the affective domain. Clear है? So as a teacher, we need to, whenever we are teaching a subject, we must try to first write down what is it that a student will be able to do at the end of unit of instruction. You can develop these or achieve the affective domain objectives, theory classes also, from the practical classes also. It is not something that you need to achieve separately, but being in the theory, being in the laboratory, being in the workshop, you can achieve the affective domain objectives also. So try to write down what is that a student will be able to do at the end of unit of instruction. And try to select appropriate methods, media and evaluation techniques to assess the student performance with respect to achievement of these objectives. Only thing I would say, affective domain objectives, the attitudes and values, this is not one-time observation which will be made. You are going to observe your students throughout the session. Throughout the session. आपका अगर सेमेस्टर में आपकी कोई एक जो क्लास है वो 40 बार लग रही है, तो 40 बार बच्चे की पंक्चुअलिटी को आप देखोगे and then you will say whether the student is punctual for the class or not. सिर्फ एक दिन अगर पंक्चुअल हूँ, 10 दिन नहीं हूँ, तो आप ये नहीं कहोगे कि मैं पंक्चुअल हूँ. ठीक है ना? So you have to observe it for 40 times the behavior of the student, and then you have to come to the conclusion whether you are able to bring that change among your student or not. So friends, here I stop, and I would request you can write objectives for one of the topics taken from your subject you are teaching in the institution, and then try to share with each other and then find out whether you are able to write or not. And the next session which we have today, that is on selection of methods of instruction, and we'll be focusing only on 3 methods of instruction, that is case study, brainstorming and collaborative learning. These are the 3 which will be taken up in the next session. So thank you very much. If you have any question, you are welcome.